What's a story you are dying to tell but haven't found the correct question to it yet? In 2005 I was taking the water taxi across the Baltimore Harbor with my mom, my aunt, my sister 15, and my cousin 16. I was 9. I was telling my mom and aunt how dirty the water is, look at all the trash, there's a soda bottle, plastic bags, oh my gosh there's a hand, no one looked and my mom and aunt laughed it off and continued their conversation even though I was low-key freaking out trying to convince them. My aunt calls my mom the next day. Police find chopped up body parts in the harbor. I did see a hand, it's a joke in our family now lol. In my language, the word for swan sounds kinda similar to the phrase on water. When I was a kid, I misheard and for a few years thought the animals were literally called on waters. It made perfect sense to my little kid brain. I mean, they are on water. I even told people how smart it was to name them that, and no one ever corrected me until years later. A few years ago, I was a senior in college and was applying to law schools. The University of Oklahoma wanted to schedule a phone interview with me. The date that they picked was not just a Friday, but the Friday before Halloween weekend. My friends and I had a solid weekend of drinking planned. I was told to expect a phone call between noon and 4 p.m. The university also said that they may get behind, and that if they didn't call by 5 o'clock, the interview would be rescheduled for next Monday. Well, 5 o'clock rolls around with no phone call, so I start getting aggressively drunk while dressed as Abe Lincoln with my roommates. Then, at 6:30, my phone rings. I pick up. Hello. This is so-and-so with the University of Oklahoma School of Law. I'm sorry that we're calling so late. Are you available for that interview? Of course, my drunk butt agrees. Now, I had never in my life been to Oklahoma. My only knowledge of the state comes from the eponymous musical and the movie Twister. I talked about those two things quite a bit during the interview. I don't remember exactly what all I was asked or what I said, but they loved it. The next week, the same admissions person called back told me I had been accepted, and offered a substantial scholarship. I guess the moral of the story is that, when in doubt, drunkenly ramble about Twister. I saved a toddler from drowning last summer at it. It was a freak incident of being in the right place at the right time. I was walking to my car in the driveway to grab something. Out of the corner of my eye I saw two toddlers on my neighbor's pool deck. I called out and asked if anyone was watching them, because at the angle I was standing, I couldn't see the entire deck. They were getting closer to the ladder. Then something in me snapped and I realized they were both in their clothes and not bathing suits. I don't even remember running over there. By the time I reached the pool edge, one of them was drowning right in the middle, completely submerged. I didn't even see her go in. I tried to jump over the edge and get a hold of her, but I couldn't reach. I started yelling bloody murder for my neighbor. Luckily she heard me and came out right away. The way she screamed, "She's in the pool," still haunts me. By this time the baby's mom ran out too. I finally managed to jump up high enough and grab her arm to pull her out. It was crazy. If I hadn't gone out to my car at that exact moment, she'd be dead. I was having heart palpitations for like 3 hours after. The family did send me flowers. Edit, it was an above-ground pool, the deck gate was locked. Also, the girl and her family were not my neighbors, they had come over for a birthday party. Last week, I was told by a liver specialist I have something called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. It's a rare genetic disorder. Affects 1 in 2,500 people. Makes me very susceptible to both liver and lung disease, with a few others thrown in for good measure. I'm being referred to a few other specialists as well. Was given a bit of info, and told to visit a website about it for more information. As I'm leaving, he asks me to make another appointment for 6 months from now. But he asks me if I can make the appointment for a certain day of the week. See, he's going to have a fellow observing around that time, and he'll only be in on that day of the week. And he likes to make sure to book all the interesting cases for that day so the fellow can see them. For some reason, having a doctor call your case interesting doesn't really do a lot to make you feel better about the situation. I live in Alberta, Canada, and we had a really bad wildfire recently. It wasn't near enough to where I live for me to evacuate, but one day I wake up and the sky is filled with smoke. The sun looked like the eye of Sauron. The light filtering through the smoke made everything look like that screen softener you can put on your phone at max. My parents wouldn't let me or my siblings go to school because the air quality was horrendous. I saw someone walking to the bus stop wearing a full-on gas mask. I once fought a guy outside of a club in San Francisco who just hit a woman. The guy ended up fleeing and I felt like a tough guy. About 10 minutes later he came back with a gun and the woman who got hit immediately rushed to me and essentially pulled me inside this club and locked the door. She probably saved my life because I didn't even notice the guy returning. The cops never caught him. A lady I met through video games is in a coma because some idiot was texting and jumped a highway barrier and hit her head on. That's all of the story I know. Sucks sitting here waiting to hear any news from her husband. I just posted this elsewhere and then I realized it was a 3-day-old thread. Oops, so I'll post it here. When I was a kid, like 5, my dad gave me his NES. He had Tetris. I turned it on and the first thing you see at the main menu is a Russian palace, then blocks start falling. My child brain put 2 and 2 together and assumed that the point of the game was to use the blocks to build a castle. When your castle reaches the top, you win, and when a row disappears, that's the bad guys trying to destroy your castle. My dad would watch me build castles for hours and wouldn't say a darn thing. He just let me enjoy it, but I do remember him laughing a lot. When I got a little older, he finally told me how to actually play Tetris. And I immediately lost interest. I didn't rediscover Tetris until my teens, and I still think back to those early days whenever I play a round of 99. In high school, we were told to team up to write a PSA reminding people to wear their seatbelts. I was immediately struck with inspiration, greater than it took Dorothy 3 clicks to get home safely. It only takes you one. Half my group didn't get it. The other half didn't care. I thought it was clever and never got the appreciation it deserves, so I'm hoping you guys like it. Edit: for those who don't know the reference, the 3 clicks are a reference to the scene in The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy is told that, to get home, she needs to click her heels together 3 times. The 1 click it takes you is putting your seatbelt on. In 2015 I traveled around the USA for 6 weeks. A few weeks in I caught the bus from NYC to Boston. We arrived at 5 p.m. I somehow managed to get extremely lost while walking to the hostel. As in, at midnight I was still walking around with no idea of where TF to go, despite my maps telling me I was close. I didn't know if my phone and the bus stop maps were deceiving me, or if my sense of direction was worse than I thought. Fast forward to 12:30 a.m. I'm in Chelsea. The streets are very quiet, very little foot and vehicle traffic. I see a police car parked up ahead. Great, I thought. They'll be able to help me, but as I walk toward them, around 8 more police cars come screaming up the street, lights on and sirens sounding, all pulling up outside this townhouse. Some of the policemen, women fan out, using their cars as cover, guns trained at various parts of the house, while the rest of the officers breach the residence. At this point I'm terrified. I'm hearing and seeing things I never thought I'd see outside a crime show. So I ran, somehow found a taxi rank, and dove into the first cab. We drove for not even 5 minutes. The hostel was only 2 streets away from me. I finally made it. Only 8 hours after arriving, cabbie came in and chilled with a bunch of us for a while, and a Chelsea local who happened to be staying at the hostel reprimanded me for being in a questionable neighborhood so late. I have tried Googling what happened that night to no avail. I have no idea what I witnessed that night, and I hope I never see anything like it again. A gut feeling of something being wrong, and it turned out to be true. I had to go away for a few days for a college orientation my senior year of high school, and I really didn't feel right about being gone for the 3 days that I was going to be. I just had this really bad feeling of impending doom, so the Friday before my college orientation, after I got out of school for the day, I went to my best friend's house and hung out with him for a while. Something just really didn't feel right, and I knew that before I left I needed to tell my best friend that I loved him one more time. So before I left that afternoon I told him that I loved him like he was my brother, that I was there for him no matter what he needed from me, and that he was my best friend before he was anything else. I told him that if he needed me for anything, I would be a phone call away and that I would be back on Wednesday, and that I promised I would see him Thursday after my practice graduation. I said I loved him one last time, and then I left to go home and get ready for my trip. It was the last conversation I ever had with my best friend face to face. He died on Wednesday night before I could see him again on Thursday like I had planned. It was the most devastating and painful thing that I have ever experienced in my entire life. I was right that something was wrong, and I am grateful that I listened to my gut and told him I loved him one last time. My best friend died knowing that I loved him, that I considered him my family, and that I cherished all the time that I spent with him, but my fluffing God, how I wish I was wrong. My dad died last month and when I found out I laughed. It sounds terrible at first but he was a narcissistic junkie who manipulated everyone and destroyed the mental health of 2 partners and 5 children, including myself. He made me homeless at 18 by blaming me for his own stealing from our family, which cost me years of contact with my siblings as I was vilified for it. I was only forgiven when he was caught out for carrying on after I was gone. What a dumb fluff. Thanks to my mental health due to him and other misfortunes, I'd spent years teetering on the edge of addiction and the only thing that stopped me falling was my resolve to be everything he wasn't. I stick to my moral code and it's not for sale. I do not have a price, clean and sober for over 2 years now, occasionally enjoying a drink or smoke but that's my limit and I stick to it. Now he's gone and I'm not, and at 27 I finally feel free to move on with my life without that chain around my neck. Even now when I'm alone, I laugh at the air and am filled with such unimaginable joy to be finally building something beautiful out of myself. When years ago he told me I should give up on my dreams, I'm making them my reality instead. I've discussed my feelings with my loved ones OFC, but there's something about writing it down and putting it somewhere for strangers to see that makes me happy. This is my story and it's going to have a fluffing happy ending.